bring it into the conversation. But without further ado, I'd like to invite James into the conversation. So James, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Greetings to you all. Very nice to be here with you, as it were, with you. And Themba, oh Mike, there's going to be piano playing in the next room. I hope it's not too loud. Themba, we met first, didn't we, in Lichfield Cathedral, where you had trained a choir to take part in our John Passion the first time we did it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was, and actually the choir was one of the most animated with whom we worked, and it really showed signs that they were loved and cared for and well prepared. So it was a happy meeting. And then it was only a while after that that I learned that you had embarked on a solo singing career. I guess you've been in preparation for some years. So I just wanted to ask, when did you start singing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel there's various phases, if you like, to my my career. So I started training when I was 18. So that's when I went to the conservatoire in Birmingham. But even at that point, that was opera singing or classical singing was very, very new to me at that stage. Before that, I'd done, pop music stuff, musicals on stage and stuff, but I'd never really got into opera. So I just sort of started because I had to do, grade 8 singing for my music A level and stuff like that. That's kind of how I got into it. But I just had a really great singing teacher who just kind of like kept on pushing me, put like opportunities, it was just in Wales. And so I sort of ended up in the National Youth Choir of Wales and just started to open me up to the whole classical music experience, really. And so that's when the opera side started. And then, there's after graduating, I guess I had a gap and did other things for a few years before, later realizing that there was something about opera that I couldn't quite let go of, and I needed to sort of come back at it. But that was maybe, I don't know, it wasn't that long ago. It was maybe 2015, 2016 that I really decided that I'm going to pursue this. So yeah, a bit of a stop-start.
But can we go back to the beginning? You mentioned that special encouragement that you got. That's important in the lives of so many artists, that someone gave them special encouragement. And can you just share with us the nature of the encouragement that was given to you? What was the special characteristic of it that, I'm sure somebody else said you'd be a great football player, or you'd be a great something else, or, oh, you should really be a dentist. But somehow this caught on with you because of something innate, but probably also because of the character of the encouragement.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I was extremely fortunate because I had essentially there were two people. There was my music teacher, for general and just music lessons, but she started the process by encouraging me to take up instrumental lessons. And at the time, this was it was the Flintshire Music Service, and at the time they were paying for multiple singing lessons, so there was no sort of barrier. And so I was taking, I think at one point I was having like 4 or 5 different instrumental lessons at school at the same time. And she was really keen, just encouraging anything that I was interested in. She would sort of make it happen and like put that in my way. And so that was the first thing. But then my singing teacher who I had, I think it was more like, it was definitely clear encouragement that I had something, but it was also kind of insisting that I just did things. Because at that time, I think when I first started having lessons, I was probably like 16 or maybe 15, and I had a lot, I had a lot of distractions and stuff, and I wasn't really focused. Although music was everything, I wasn't really focused on it at the time, on singing anyway. And she it was a slow work, and I felt that week on week, she was like, this is good. You should do that. Have you considered auditioning for this choir? Have you considered this? And then she would, the next week would come with the paperwork that I needed, and she'd already have signed it or done a reference or something. And so it was kind of like a gentle, just pushing me towards things that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. And I think she knew that I needed that. You know, if she had just said, you know, have you thought about applying, and then just left it with me, I think she could see that I probably just wouldn't engage with it. So I think she had that sense of seeing where I was at and what I needed, and I think that was the key.
I think you were very lucky.
Oh
I think
yeah,
really lucky. That was
yeah, I still, I mean, you know, to this day, I think of her name was Jean Stanley Jones. I think of her a lot because I do know if it wasn't for her, I would not have, you know, I wouldn't have gone to conservatoire. I wouldn't have been doing classical music. It's quite sort of night and day with that, really. And so I owe a lot to her, really. Yeah.
I think it's exceptional the number of people who are doing what they want to do, who can remember someone who gave their time and their interest to making them feel it was possible to do what they wanted to do. It's a remarkable thing about teaching. And
Yeah.
I think very many of us have something to be grateful for in that line. Just wondering, do you remember? Ever remember a time when you didn't sing in your life?
Well, not really. I grew up in Zambia, and my parents were both quite involved in the church life in Zambia, and it was like a sort of traditional church where music and singing is just like it's just not a thing. It's just it's part of the whole experience. So I grew up with singing and just making music in general. Were just I didn't see it as a separate thing. It was just very much part of life. I never thought before I opened my mouth I would just just join in. And so yeah, I did. That's my earliest experience of it was just this natural part of the community, like making music. So I never had to think. I never had to really process that rationale or decide I want to pursue music. It was just always in my life, if you like.
And when was the transition, if indeed you experienced it as a transition, when you learned to read music? So music became a language, a written language, as well as an expressive and emotional language.
Yeah, that was much. That was later on. I very much sort of kicked and screamed my way towards that because I remember I was having my nan had this is when I was in England and in secondary school. She was very keen that I had classical lessons. I wasn't just doing whatever I wanted, and so I had piano lessons, classical piano lessons. But I still at that point was just doing everything by ear. I would maybe watch my piano teacher play some bits, but I wouldn't read. I wouldn't be reading the music. I would be doing it all by ear, and because that was just what I'd done up until that point. And I think I went on like that until even I think I got to grade 6 with basically not really reading music. And at that point, it became clear. I think I got as far as looking at the grade 7 book, and I just I thought I knew at that point I'd reached a new level. And so it was about then that I sort of had the choice really of whether to just ignore the other side of music, the reading and written part, or whether to actually engage with it. And I think I started to engage with it, and partly just by force. When I was auditioning for the youth choirs and stuff, you'd be shoved a piece of music you'd have to read off, by sight, and I would. Those were the most embarrassing experiences of my life. So and it's a very slow process because I'm always envious of those people who've sung in choirs when they were younger because they just again, that's their language. They just, maybe it's not really easy, but they've been introduced to it from much earlier on. Whereas I felt like I was coming at it just really late on. And so it was always a struggle. Even when I was at a conservatoire, I struggled, even though I was, developing a language for it, and I just always struggled with it, and even beyond. And I think it was only I would say it's only a few years ago that I really became confident, partly through teaching actually, because teaching kind of forced me to think about it more seriously, because I'm then either playing for pupils or having to explain notation to them, and that really forced me to get to basics and understand it. And now I feel much much more confident with it.
Can you remember the feeling when you knew that you could really read music, that you that it meant something rich and deep? It wasn't just something you were tacking to sounds, you were connecting, which is in itself hard work. But I think there's a moment of liberation, isn't there, when you...
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say exhilaration. Like um, I remember the feeling. Because I think so much of the time, sight reading for me has been associated with like really high pressure situations, being put on the spot or something. And when I sort of was able to detach myself from those high pressure situations and just be at home, like it was the same kind of joy when you learn a language, I think, and you're like, oh, I'm actually speaking this. I had that real excitement of like, being able to connect it, but actually, it's hard to explain actually, because you're right. It's more than just going from one note to the next. You're sort of entering into another world, or as it were. Like so, yeah, I would say real exhilaration, that feeling of reading. And
It must have been kind of daunting for you when, if you came to reading late-ish, when after one audition, I asked you if you would sing the role of Mel in The Nut Garden,
yeah.
because that is no walk in the park.
Yeah, it's not. It really isn't. But I think by that point, I was in a good place to. I'm not really phased by much these days, and I'm not sure why. I don't know how I've got to that point, to be honest. But I almost relish the challenge. So when I opened the Not Garden score, there was a moment of like, ooh, okay, this is going to take some time. This is going to take my summer to sort of just get my head around this. But yeah, I do like the challenge, and I love sitting down. It's strange. I've almost gone the opposite way now, where I love to sit down with a metronome and actually drill in some rhythms and pick things apart, and even like explore the harmony that's around it, and things that I never used to think about before. Now I get real enjoyment out of that. So
Did you
yeah, the Knot Garden is a great piece for that, because it has so much complexity in it. And
Yes, and he doesn't set things out in a way that makes it easy for the performer. Uh, it's effortful to learn, but somehow when I've worked on Tippett, I felt that it wasn't effort for no purpose. Um, there, there was a purpose there that only became clear in performance and putting it together with the orchestra, putting it together with the other performers. But did you feel anything about that character of Mel? Did you feel a connection or an attraction to the character as well as it was work?
yeah, um, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very. In fact, I've been doing lots of reading just around the Knot Garden and stuff, because it has some interesting. Well, it's a very interesting piece, and It's not a very. There's not like one obvious way of reading it, as far as I can see. There's lots of different things going on. But yeah, so the first thing that attracts me, obviously, is the mix of musical styles. So because Mel is this sort of black man, and obviously Tippett was quite heavily influenced by, the jazz scene in America, and blues even, and so as soon as I hear some of those rhythms and those sounds coming in, there's something I mean, I can't deny I enjoy that. I enjoy those rhythms and those sounds. So just in terms of the melodies and the rhythms, there's a lot in the role of Mel to enjoy, but it is a different. I do enjoy the characters that. I mean, it's hard because there's not many there's not many black characters, or different characters from different backgrounds in opera to choose from, but there is stuff to connect with in those roles that I couldn't necessarily do with a traditional Italian role or something like that. It it varies from role to role, but I feel like with Mel, there's just something. There's certainly more of myself that I can put into that, and it even the language, you feel that some of it just feels a bit more natural, sort of to speak to sing it.
Mm. Well, I hope we'll do it again.
Yeah.
I've got every limb crossed at the moment. You can't see it because you're only seeing the upper part of my body. That we'll be doing that in autumn 22, and you'll be revisiting that role. And in the meantime, we're really hoping that we can create a role for you in the autumn, because we're also excited about this Syrian. He wouldn't have called himself a physicist, but he was a physicist. You know, he was almost inventing modern physics, Ibn al-Haytham, and we're hoping that we'll be making an opera for young children based around his teaching, a lot of which is actually part of the curriculum. So more crossing, uncrossing, and crossing again, but we'll be able to perform that in schools, and that we'll be able to work with you on creating that new piece.
Yeah, I mean that's very very exciting, and I mean I do love performing stuff for in schools, and that's a big yeah, that's a massive draw for me
Well,
as
it's the
well.
best audience, isn't it? So critical and so immediate.
Yeah.
You absolutely know when you've lost their attention,
Yeah. Yes.
and you know that you have to get it back soon.
It's really very obvious when when you're not quite getting the way of the room, you know. And I always say to people, and I wonder if you agree, Themba, that it requires the most energy to perform to a room of children, and you don't actually realize how much energy that is until you get in that room. You know, I've done a few kids shows now, and my colleagues at ETO have done them, and but it is a total thrill, isn't it,
Yeah,
Themba?
it's
Have you had that
thrilling,
same
but yeah,
experience?
I agree. It's exhausting because I think that it's like every second almost feels critical. They're either with you or you've lost them. It's like they need true, like real commitment to every moment. You can't just slack off for a minute while and I think that's what's exhausting about it. You know, even. I think most shows I've done in schools have been like maybe 45 minutes, an hour maximum, but I'm still like wiped out afterwards. Oh, it's just because of the mental energy kind of involved in that is quite, yeah, it's quite something. But yes, the reward is huge as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to go back to the rewards, and um, I think there's something special about people who choose careers as performers. Um, Something a bit crazy too, because it's such an insecure life.
Yeah.
One might even say that the profession chooses them to a certain extent, and it's whether or not they have the opportunity and the drive to answer the call. At least I hear that. And I wondered, when you sing now, having had years of classical training and the formation that you've described going right back to church singing in Zambia, when you sing, do you feel you're expressing who you are?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Yeah, the simple answer is yes. I think there are there are times when I always feel there's quite a strong connection between my singing and what's going on in my life. Um, Maybe that's not the most healthy thing. I don't know, but there are certainly times where it's more difficult, and whether there's tension and something. So it's not. I wouldn't say it's all the time, but I think there's large parts now where I'm whether it's on stage or just whether it's in my practice at home, where I'm like, whoa, this feels. There's something about like this is me, like, and you're letting that out, and there's something quite powerful about it, I think. And so I think I kind of, in a way, I've kind of become addicted to that feeling and chasing that feeling of I do think about this sometimes, because I think as a child I wasn't the most articulate, and I used to sort of have my brother and sister used to make fun of me because I would take forever to get to the point of any sentence that I was trying to say, and so I've not grown up a particularly coherent and like concise communicator, and so I think when I'm actually able in this loud, powerful, expressive way to say something or to communicate something, that does feel pretty amazing for me. And I think, yeah, maybe it is the contrast with, you know, like I say, my communication when I was younger. But even now, it doesn't totally feel like, my day-to-day character isn't sort of one of really over the top or, really out there. So there is something unique about opera that it allows me to express something that feels very me, but also at the same time very like very over the top in a way, which is it's a strange combination, but it's very satisfying. I think when it goes well, when it works.
How does it feel when it works?
um, it's the best feeling. I think there's a moment where it's like the connection of. It's sort of similar to what we were talking about with the reading of music, that when there's a connection not just of pictures and words, but the connection to meaning and a thought inside. And I think for me that's the beautiful thing, is when it's I'm struggling to describe it really, but there's when you connect all those things together, whether it's an emotion and a thought, and then it also you are able to actually get it out, which is, I think, something just generally is quite hard to do. Certain people are naturally more sort of expressive and whatever, but it's quite a hard thing to actually say how you feel, to show how you feel. And I think so it feels cathartic. It feels I feel like a great release after I've if I'm able to do that. And
I guess it's
actually,
a whole.
I mean, I wouldn't go as far. Don't want to over exaggerate it, but I do often afterwards for the rest of the day feel just like just more like happy with myself and just in a confident place because I've done something, I've said something. It's a strange thing.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it's very physical, as you pointed out in the singing lesson you so kindly made for us, that, really keeping the sound rooted. I think often people in audiences have no idea how much of the body is involved in singing.
Yeah.
And that the technique is learned over a long time. And it is very bloody technical. And it never stops being technical. You never stop learning. But the irony is that it also seems to be very personal and expressive. Even though there's a learned technique, the learned technique seems to facilitate really deeply personal expression.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because I think that's always certainly, earlier on when a couple of years ago when I was trying to work on technique, you feel a very real tension between, you're like, why do I have to do all this technical stuff if I just want to, express something? And then I find myself going between extremes. So sometimes I'll be very, very technical, but then, I'll listen to a recording back and think, oh my gosh, that sounds like so unmusical and so like, rigid and stuff, even though technically I'm doing a lot of good things. So, and then, so the next week I'll go to almost abandon technique and just go for this much more emotional thing. And I'll listen back and I'll be like, oh, that's so like thin, or, so it's a constant balancing act. That's still very much a part of my my everyday experience with singing. I am trying to balance being true, being expressive, but also doing all the physical stuff, breathing really deep, which is something, again, there's levels to it. You can breathe, but then you can really connect. And so I guess it's that finding that place in the middle where you're doing both things at the same time. But it is, there's lots of singer teachers now who talk about the comparisons between being an athlete or being, essentially there's an athleticism to it, to training your body, breath and what you're doing and all of that stuff. And then there's the sort of I guess the magical bit on top of that, which is the expressiveness and the communication. But you sort of have to have both, I think.
It's funny, in auditions sometimes, you're looking for people, we are anyway, because we do long tours, you're looking for people who are technically sound, because the conditions are different in every theatre. The tours are long. The commitment we look for is pretty intense. Um, Everybody has to work hard, and they rely on each other a lot. But even though you're looking in audition for technical assurance as well as what an audience will find beautiful, which isn't always what I find beautiful, but there's a meeting place there.
Yeah.
But over the thing that you go away with every time is, and it's funny, it affects me as if it's a sad thing as well as a joyous thing, is that it really is who they are. When you're trying to sum up what a singer offers in audition with a technically skilled performance of an aria that maybe they've sung a million times and that I've heard a million times,
yeah,
you come away with a sense of who they are and how that may limit them, or it may give them a particular color, a particular contribution to a piece that they're going to make with other people. Well, I'm not saying it very well, but I guess I've heard it said often enough to me by conductors who were sitting on panels with me. They'd say, well, that's just who they are. That what you're talking about, that's just who that person is. And they will always be that person, no matter how they grow, no matter, like last night I was watching a Met, last night the Met thing was...
Yeah, I've been watching them too, yeah.
Armida. I don't watch many of them, but it's Armida of Rossini, which is just so bloomin' hard. You have to have a look at it. And I think Lawrence Brownlee is amazing. So I wanted to hear him and the other tenors, of course. But it was extraordinary how it was a rubbish production and stereotypical in every way. And the guy is technically just a genius. But you also got a sense of who he was, and that's what made it special.
Yeah.
That's what made it beautiful.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think, I don't know. I feel like in my own journey, like to have, it was a very conscious choice when I decided a few years ago to do opera. I feel like because there's so much, you're literally, it's a big decision in a way, and I think you do. I find there's certain people who wouldn't do it unless it was absolutely what they wanted to do, and I think that shows when someone's on stage is that they have, they've kind of, whatever their experience is, they know that they've pursued this, and because they want it or because they need it for some reason, as opposed to just, there's some people are naturally good at stuff and sort of don't have to go through that process of really unpicking what it is they love about it and what it is they get out and what they're doing, and I think it can still offer something beautiful, but I think maybe because I'm as much a sort of a fan of watching people as I am, singing myself, and so I feel the same thing. I'm constantly, when I'm watching something, looking for those performers that just, there's something about them that says, I don't know, it's a deep kind of connection, and I'm like, it's hard to describe, like you said, but certain singers do have that extra. There's something there, something going on behind the role, behind something that they're offering something really that's them, that's something that matters to them.
I always say that they're generous enough to bring themselves to the stage. They bring their technique, they bring their skills, they bring their understanding of the music, all those things which are so important. And skills are terribly important. You have to be reliable on stage. You have to not just be thinking about yourself, but thinking about everybody else, and also minding that conductor. But if they can bring themselves to the stage, there's a chance that something might happen that's a bit special. And I'm wondering if at this point we might open up to some questions coming from some of our friends who are here with this, because I've been hugging your attention all this time.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. No one's actually asked any questions yet, but if there's any questions that anyone has, then this would be a good time. Just put it in the chat, and then we'll bring them into the conversation. But I think that's a really interesting point that you were just making, because I find it so frustrating when you see a singer who is clearly focusing kind of too much on technique. And it was really great in your lesson, Themba, that you talked about intention and about using your voice in a way. And my teacher always used to say that singing technique is 2 parts imagination and 1 part technique, because you've really got to have that imagination to get the voice going. I think that's really important. And I'm a sort of singer that I'm like, oh, I just can't be doing with technique. I just want to get the message across.
Yeah.
So I might go a little too much the other way.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's interesting because I always find, I don't know if you find the same, but there's quite a discrepancy sometimes between what I'm doing in practice at home and then when I actually get on stage. When I'm on stage, the sort of the acting side of it does generally take over quite a lot, and I find myself doing different things just because I'm so keen to actually say something in a particular way or whatever. And so yeah, you do find yourself doing slightly different things when the because what we need is context, right? And so if there's someone opposite you, you've got other performers around you, you do start doing different things. And so that yeah, I think that's tricky, because that's almost when you need, like James was saying, that's when you need the technique the most, especially if you're touring or something. That's when you need your technique to be reliable. But that's actually the time when you're most likely to take risks and do different things and whatever. So I find that quite tricky, actually.
Yeah.
I'm always saying in rehearsal, feel everything. That's why we have this time to rehearse. Feel absolutely everything. Because I don't want you feeling a damn thing when you get up on stage in a performance. I want you to be reliable. Yeah. Because on some night when you're on, somebody else might be sick and there might be an understudy on, and we have to give them all their attention to get through the show. So we need you to be reliable. Now, I don't actually mean it, but like everything else, I'm taking it to the absolute extreme, because actually one time I had to walk a role for a singer who was sick and his understudy was sick. So another singer who was in the show had to sing the part from the pit whenever they weren't on, and I had to act the part. Mm-hmm. And I became really aware of people who were in the moment and people who were actually one moment ahead of the moment, so that they were able to reflect and cover for me if I didn't know where the hell to go. Or even though I directed the show, a mirror is a different sort of, or a mirror reflection is a different sort of activity.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think I love those feelings on stage when you're. I've had it a few times when someone's been ill and there's been a cover who's literally doesn't know what's going on, and helping sort of navigate that sort of situation is when everyone's on edge. But actually, in those occasions where you actually know where it's been well rehearsed, essentially, it allows you that freedom to sort of help other people, and to there's freedom within that. But I think the key is how you rehearse it and how well you sort of build those things in. So I tend to be a little bit intense in the first couple of weeks of any rehearsal, or sometimes they only have a week for certain things, and I think my impression is that some people sort of think I'm a bit sort of not overly serious or something, but they have a different perception of me, and it's just because I know how important that first sort of building in the part is. And then once we're on once the show starts or whatever, I'll be much more relaxed, because you've done the hard work, and you can play around with things more. But yeah, absolutely building in that the knowledge of the piece, knowledge of the blocking, and the basic things is really, really crucial.
Yes, that groundwork that you do, isn't it, in that first sort of very intense period of rehearsals. We have a couple of wonderful questions. The first one from our friend Clive says, in what way, if at all, do different audiences and locations affect your performance?
Yeah, good question. I think it depends what kind of show you're doing. In a recent experience, I was touring around sort of around Leeds area, but every single venue was a very different kind of venue and a very different audience, and in different layout and stuff. And in that case, it's very, you don't have a choice. You have to adapt, and you have to respond differently, because you might have a particular route to the stage that's no longer there because there's a chair in the way or something. And so there's practical things that you just have to adapt to. But I think there is also just a feeling sometimes in the air, and this is harder, I think, to know what to do about it, because sometimes, like we were kind of like what we were saying with kids, where sometimes you just feel them sort of drifting or something, and sometimes with audiences in theaters, you can get that feeling, and it's quite hard to know what to do in that situation. I think I'm still learning as a performer, but when to, sometimes your initial reaction is to just start giving more, and then you start sort of overdoing it, and actually that's the wrong thing. What people want is sometimes just to relax and just to take it back and draw them in. And so I think it's a skill to learn how to respond to different audiences and different situations.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting what you say, because I've often had sort of non-performers say to me, "What do you mean it was a good audience? What do you mean it was a bad audience?" And it's a really odd sense that you can get from the stage. I remember with English Touring Opera doing Patience by Gilbert and Sullivan, and some audiences I just thought that I had, I just thought I had them. And I think I'm probably totally guilty of what you said. If I didn't think I had them, I'd just give more. Because I would say, if less is more, then imagine how much more would be. So I was definitely guilty of that. But one of our friends here has said, I think in relation to what we're just talking about, and then there's another question, said, is not the essence of performing having the courage to expose yourself to the audience? And I think that's a really interesting point, that, you might expose yourself to get that sort of feedback. And we have a question here from Julie, and she says, Themba, in your training, what was the acting training like? Did it give you the skills you needed?
Oh, yeah, interesting. I think acting training, it's an interesting one with singers, because it very much depends on how seriously the singer takes it. Because I think acting training was available. Certainly it was available to me at the conservatoire. I had a great acting coach. But it was interesting how there was different levels of engagement. Lots of people wouldn't turn up to the acting class. They saw it as the one that you could get away with missing or whatever. But I've always loved acting. I think I haven't done much straight acting, but I did start in my first thing on stage was I was doing a musical, Bugsy Malone, when I was like 13, and there is something about the act. I mean, that's obviously singing as well, but there's something about acting which I really enjoy. So when I got to conservatoire, I was lapping up every single, every week, with different exercises, different things. I was just lapping it all up because I really love that, and I kind of need that as well in my performing to make sense of it, because otherwise you just feel like you're just making a big ridiculous noise and like there's not much point to it. So I'm really grateful to I still refer back to some of the stuff that I had just from my time at conservatoire. When we had Stanislavski classes or whatever things. So I've got the books, in recent years, because it's still relevant to me now. So I hugely appreciate and need that sort of the other element to singing.
Great, thank you, Themba. Well, we haven't got any more questions, and I think we're just coming up to our 40-minute mark. So it's been really great to have you both with us. Thank you, James, for asking questions, and thank you, Themba, for being here. And thank you to all of you for joining. It's really lovely to feel like we're bringing our audience closer to us when we're all isolated and far away, and we really can't wait to get back to performing live to you and to be engaging with you online. So if you haven't already subscribed, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all of the videos. We've got some lovely singing lessons, and we've got this great warm technical series which is still going on. We've got some good long format ones coming out soon, one about the John Passion and one about countertenors, which is great. But please do come back next week. Do sign up again. We're with the wonderful soprano Philippa Boyle, who was due to sing the mum in Mark Anthony Turnich's Greek. And it'd be lovely to have you. Share it with your friends. Let's get the conversation going. So thanks so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.